Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Zap, and this is a video that was requested by a subscriber. In this video, I'm going to go through a couple games, and I'm going to point out the differences between a 7870 Hawk and the 660 Ti. The subscriber had asked me about them and what I thought, my opinion on the two graphics cards, since I have owned both of them. So, right now, this is gameplay on the 660 Ti. And the reason for that is because right now, I had sold my system that had the 7870 to a friend. So, that being said though, we are going to take a look at just the game. So, as you can see, it looks good. You know, it's very fluid. I have got it to where it's trying to run 60 frames. That's what I was aiming for whenever I came up with the presets and stuff on this. So all I wanted to do was hit 60 frames. So I'm going to show you the graphics options. As you can see, I've got it set to 120 Hz because my monitor supports it. I've got motion blur on, screen effects. The quality is custom. So the texture quality is set up to Ultra. The texture filters by linear. I had that turned down also on the 7870. The hair quality is normal. With AMD cards, you can use the trace effects. Looks good. I got anti-aliasing off, shadows off, and I don't know why that's set to high. But everything else is ultra and high. I mean, everything else. Whenever I was doing the 7870, I would have to turn some of these down. Like the reflections I turned down, the level of detail I turned down. The SSAO I turned pretty much all the way down just to hit 60 frames. It done it though, but I think I used more AA, and I pushed the AA through the Catalyst Control Center. So where's this dude talking at? So that being said though, I pushed it through the Catalyst Control Center, so I didn't really have to push it in through game, but it did have it. Alright, sorry, I'm not talking, trying to fight these fellers here. Boom, headshot. I'm awesome. So, let's talk about the differences between a 7870 Hawk and a 660 Ti. I have the Asus version, the DC2. Alright, so the differences are, the 7870 Hawk runs on a 256-bit memory interface. The 660 Ti, however, runs on 192. So there is kind of that difference right there. The 7870 has a 4800 megahertz memory clock, while the 660 Ti has a 6008 memory clock. The core clock on the 7870 is 1200 megahertz, while the 660 Ti, mine is 987 with a boost up to 1056, but mine boosts up to 1249. See if I can shoot this dude in the face. Boom, right in the face. Him too. So that's the difference. It's just so that you know though, you can't really compare the core clock on an NVIDIA to the core clock on an AMD. It just doesn't work that way. They're separate, so it's kind of like AMD versus Intel. You can't really go by the almighty gigahertz. It all depends on the architecture and everything like that. It just depends on how well the card actually does. Now, there is a big price difference between a 660 Ti and a 7870. When they first came out, they was. Right now, there's still a price difference. When they first came out, a 7870 Hawk was it came out, it started at $339 until NVIDIA released Kepler. Once Kepler came out, they dropped down to $259.99, and that's where they stayed until the card was discontinued. It is a limited edition run. So it was $259. of 660 Ti was $310. So there was about a $50 difference between the two, give or take. So you would expect that you would get $50 worth of performance. Now, as you've seen in here, I do have mine overclocked, and you probably do. There's quite a bit of difference between the two in this game alone. And this is actually a game that comes in the Never Settle bundle, and it does support a lot of AMD features, but the 660 Ti handles it really, really well. It looks very good. It's very fluid. There's no trouble with it. I'm able to get higher qualities and still maintain the 60 frames a second mark, which is what I usually try and aim for. So now we're going to switch over to something like Battlefield 3. We're going to take a look at it. Welcome back. This is the Battlefield 3 segment of my comparison of the 7870 Hawk and a 660 Ti. Now I do run these in SLI, but right now I am actually doing this just a single card, so to be reasonable and get, you know, close to as correct as I can get with these, you know, a good comparison. So with the 7870, when I used it in this game, I was able to get around 100 frames, but I didn't max it out. I went for the smoothness. You know, I pulled a Rival X Factor, actually. I used his settings and went for what was comfortable and to where I could constantly stay over 100 frames. And I actually had to turn quite a bit of stuff down to do that. So let's look at the quality setting, or the graphics settings on this one. So as you can see, I have everything here turned to ultra with the anti-aliasing, deferred post, motion blur, anisotropic filtering, and ambient occlusion. I have that off. Whenever I did this with the 7870, the mesh quality, the terrain decoration, and the effects quality was turned down to medium or low. Also with the shadow quality. I'm sorry, the mesh quality was actually ultra. Ultra on the texture quality, mesh quality, and texture quality. Everything else was set to medium or low, so I could hit 100 frames per second. With this right here, what I'm running now on these settings, I can easily hit 100 frames per second with this card. That being said though, I'm not doing this at stock. I'm not comparing these stock to stock, I'm comparing them overclocked. And the reason for that is because I think everybody should overclock. It's easy, it's simple to do if you've got the time, and it can be quite fun and rewarding. Now, let's talk about overclocking on these two cards. The 7870 Hawk is made for overclocking. It supports overvoltage, triple overvoltage actually, on the core, the memory, and the PLL. On NVIDIA cards, the only way that you can get that much overclocking potential is if you buy a Power Edition or a Hawk or a Lightning card. And that's the only thing in NVIDIA that supports the overvoltage and stuff. You can set your TDP higher, and it's 123 max. That being said though, I found it quite easier to overclock the NVIDIA cards versus the AMD card that I had. And the reason for that is because to overclock the AMD card, to be able to push it to where you needed to have a really, really, really good motherboard and power supply to be able to deliver the power that you needed. Now that can be said about any graphics card actually. But we're going to compare these. So the system that I had, that I'm comparing this against, I had a pretty crappy motherboard and power supply. It didn't really support overvoltage that much on any of it. The power supply was 80 plus bronze at 600 watts. You know, it was all I could do to overclock it a little bit. So I got 1250 on the core, which is an extra 150 I think, and about 1400 on the memory, which is 200, and didn't touch the voltages. So that's a pretty decent overclock. It could have went farther. I've seen it to where people were getting 200 on the core and like 500 or more on the memory. And that equates to pretty significant. You're probably looking at about 10% extra. Now, on the NVIDIA card though, I set the TDP to 123%, and I was able to get an extra 500 on the memory, because that right there is really what sets this card apart from a 670, is the memory interface. So I was able to get 500 on the memory and 75 on the core. So this thing boosts up almost to 1300 on the core. It's massive. Plus the extra 500 on the memory. So instead of it being, what is it? How do they multiply it? It's multiplied by 4, I think. So instead of it being stock at like 1300 or something, or 14, it's actually running around 1900. Times 4, you get it. It's over 7,000 on the memory clock, which is really, really good. So, that being said though, overclocking, that is. The MSI 7870 Hawk offers a lot more overclocking choices, if that's what you want. If you've got the system that can support it, then you should be able to hit some really, really, really high clocks and be able to get quite a bit significant performance. All in all, they'll run pretty close to each other. The only time that you'll see, honestly, I don't think it warrants the $50 price difference. It might, but I do love my NVIDIA card. I don't know if I'll go back to AMD. I love the drivers better, the way it overclocks, because it does support EVGA Precision X, which I think is a great overclocking utility. But on the same side though, AMD cards are cheaper, and it's easier to get one into your rig and get great performance. So if you've got the money and you want the best, then I would almost say go with NVIDIA, just because of their drivers and the utilities that come with it. If you want sheer raw performance for a great price, then go with the AMD. Also, you can't buy the 7870 anymore. It's discontinued. So that will conclude this little tutorial or review or whatever you want to call it between the two cards. I hope this helped you. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Peace out.